Hello folks. Got the two pins done on this wing now. They are so tight that's on there without glue. I'm getting much better at this. I figured I would, just with slow progress. What I'm doing literally is I'm drawing locator lines and measuring. It's just measuring. It's like carpentry work. You do a lot of measuring and then you drill. No difference here. I'm amazed how tight that fits. One thing though, I thought I had all the bubbles taken care of. Then I start looking. And of course my camera's wonderful problems with zooming in real close. You can see it right where my finger's pointing. There's a bubble. And there's a fine mess of bubbles along here. No big deal. Mr. Surfacer will take them down real quick. I just wish I had caught them when I was doing the nose of this thing. You know, this part right here. Wish I'd caught it before I did that. But hey, that's the way life is, isn't it? It won't be bad because those are minor. They're on a very nice, smooth surface. Unlike this thing, this is very rounded and I have to preserve the shape as I'm doing it. But anyhow, I'll be back. I've got the other wing to get set in place. And then the locator pins on this thing need to be drilled and cut off of this thing. I gotta cut these off and drill my own locator pins, and that will be fun. I'll be back in a bit. Boy, I think I can pick them, because I start looking at this wing and guess what I find along the wing surface? Bubbles! More bubbles! Lots and lots of tiny bubbles. I think we need a Don Ho song at this point in time. Bubbles, tiny bubbles. I don't know the song. I'm not going to sing it. But anyhow, I got to get them fixed. I don't think it really matters if I glue this thing together first or not. But that's going to have to get fixed. Mr. Surfacer to the rescue. That's all I got to say on that one. Back in a bit. Alright folks, you can see it right here. I'm test fitting parts together. The wings have their pins in them. These two parts have their pins in them. These parts have not had any work done yet, but I wanted to see how hard this is going to be. Drilling these pins and getting them aligned right is going to bite. This is going to be one nasty mess to assemble. I'm going to tell you that right now. One nasty little mess to assemble. And you can't glue any of this together easily. I'm going to have to use 5-minute epoxy on all these joints. Or, and they suggested in the directions for this thing, Gorilla Glue. They say the Gorilla Super Glue takes a little while to cure up. So I'm probably going to have to use that. I have some. So it's nothing I'm going to have to run out and go get. But, you know, it was like 2 or 3 minutes of wrestling just to get this thing lined up right. And that's no good when you're dealing with super glue. Just no good whatsoever. One happy thought is I can glue the wings on each of these parts first. Kind of. Because the hardest part of putting this thing together is getting these two parts together. Because those are the first ones I put the pins on, and I wasn't too good at aligning the pins. So what I got to do now is pull the wings off, cut those pins off that came on the kit. There's no alignment pins. They're not really alignment pins. They're just nubs. And this guy here has no holes for those nubs. It's just got indentations where the nubs go. So I'm going to cut the nubs off. I'm going to put a pin in its place. I'm going to drill holes in this thing corresponding where those pins go and get them to align with pins, because I don't want this thing coming apart on me. Once I get that done, I can't glue the thing together yet because I want to get these bubbles filled on these wings first and get them fixed first. Because I don't want to jostle this thing around more than I have to once I get this put together. It's going to be pretty bad with the seam filling anyhow, because this thing's going to have some pretty bad seams to fill. Aves to the rescue, because Aves is great for the kind of seams this thing's going to have. The Bondo putty would work too. So I'm going to go back and forth on which one of those to use. The Bondo putty sitting right up there in the red too. I'll make my mind up when I'm done making the putty video on this. I'm close to done with it. Okay? And I can see some trouble spots here and there I need to fix. You guys will see that in it. Probably. Yeah, you'll see that after this video's up. That's the order I'm going to go in. I'm going to put this video up, then the putty video on this. The putty video is going to go in 2 parts, unfortunately, because there's so much of it. But that's okay. Anyhow, I'm rambling. I'm going to quit that. I'll be back once I'm done with this part to let you know how it goes. Alright folks, I got all the drills holed. I keep reversing words in my sentences, and that's got to stop. I got all the holes drilled. I got all the brass pins in place right now in my mock-up, my test fitting here. And that's going to make her a heck of a lot stronger. Starting to see the shape coming into place here. I think she's going to be pretty nice when she's done. So up next, yes, they're not 100% aligned correctly over here. I can fiddle with it a little bit, but not much. What I'm thinking I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I mean, they look fine from this angle. If you take a look at the wings where they join the main guns, they look okay. It's this angle they don't. So what I'm going to do is just take some Abe's epoxy sculpt and sculpt some lines into them so they look right. I'm also going to fiddle with the holes a little bit and see if I can get them to line up just a teeny bit better. Don't know if I'm going to, because that's some fiddly bits right there. And I hit it with some Aves and get her to flow correctly. She's going to be good. The brass pins are holding it. They're pretty tight. It's not going to break on me easily. I'm happy with the security of this thing. And that's what I was looking for with the brass pins. So there'll be some sculpting to get those seams to line up correctly. I'm not too worried about that. What I'm interested in seeing is a good idea of what this thing's going to look like when it's done. It's not going to be a small model. Not at all. I'm going to be happy with this thing when it's done. Okay? One other thing I'm interested in, it'll take a second because I got to find it. The stand. I was afraid I cut that brass rod for the hole for the brass rod poorly. It fell off on me. But now, taking a look at it here, it doesn't feel too off. Feels like I got that brass rod in there just right. In fact, I'm being brave right now because there's no glue holding half that together and no tape. That's just brass rods. This thing's going to be pretty good size when she's done. Especially with that huge the vertical stabilizers on her. She's going to be pretty big. Well, that's a quick update. Up next, I'm not drilling holes or anything. I'm not gluing. I'm going to fix these things before I start assembly. So that's what's next. Fixing the bubbles. More bubble, bubble, bubble. But once the bubbles are done, then I'll glue this together and then start doing my seam filling, because there's some good sized seams on this to smooth out and fill. You can see that by looking at it. That's what Aves is for. Be back later. Howdy, howdy. That's what they say around here. Howdy. Anyhow, funny story about howdy. I'm at Texas A&M University. This was years ago when I was working on my engineering degree. And I worked for the math department. And one of the math professors walks up and says, "Why does everyone keep saying Audi to me?" I said, "Howdy? That's a greeting." He said, "No, Audi is a type of German car, and everyone keeps saying Audi to me." He was from Germany. He was mishearing. H-O-W-D-Y is A-U-D-I. Anyhow, wanted to say that real quick. Getting back to this, Brakiri Cruiser. I got all the pins fitting up well. Okay. These still don't fit 100% correct, and I don't think I'm ever going to get them 100% correct. The model has a few alignment issues here and there. I'm going to coat that with Aves and just stuff that joint with Aves. You may have seen the video, may not have. I did some experiments with Aves and a couple of resin pieces. It was these two resin pieces. And you can see that spot of Aves right there. I glued them together, clamped it with Aves. Took a hell of a lot of force to pull this back apart. About the equivalent of using super glue, I would say. So Aves can work as a glue. So once I finally get everything glued up, I will coat those joints with Aves, fill in all the gaps, just reinforcing it real well, then smooth it and sand it down the way it's supposed to look. Aves cures up about the same degree of hardness as the resin, so it'll be about good. It'll be about right. Now, I'm getting close to gluing this up. Before I glue it, I'm going to glue the B-wing on. I'm going to go ahead and do that on camera so that you guys can see that part. I'm going to glue everything together on camera because this is tricky. This is like a big jigsaw puzzle, three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. You know, like one of those wooden cube things where you pull one piece out and it all comes apart. You have to stick it all back together and get that one piece in there just right to hold it together. It's like one of those. So I'm going to do that on film, but I'm going to glue the B-wing on first. I call it B-wing because I labeled it B. I'm going to glue that on first. I can't glue both wings on first because then I'll never get this piece in. That's where the tricky comes in. You glue one wing on, put this in, and glue the other wing on. Now, I can't glue any of this together until I'm gluing this in with the other wing. So it's going to be a fun process. I'm going to use some 5-minute epoxy on it so I have some time to get everything set up and aligned and clamped. I am going to use a little bit of super glue here and there too. I'm going to mix my glues, mix my media. I use super glue to glue all these pins in with, and I'm going to do that. Another observation I've noticed personally about me, when I get building models and start working hard and ignoring the world, my workspace gets like this, cluttered, stuff everywhere. Then I'll stop and clean it all up. Alright, I got my Gorilla Glue here. Funny thing, I bought the bottle, opened the package, and it was half gone. Don't know what happened there. But I'm going to be very liberal with this Gorilla Glue on this joint because I want it to be strong. So I'm just coating this whole thing with Gorilla Glue, getting some in these pin marks. There we go. And lining my pins and putting her on there, and I'm going to hold her for a little while because I know this Gorilla Glue takes a bit to set the way I'd like it anyhow. Oh, one other thing while I'm holding this, I did get all those bubbles fixed on the wings. They didn't take too much time. It was actually a pretty quick job. Like that glue's holding up. It was here. The A-wing was the one that was worse with the bubbles. Let's show you what that looks like because I'm putting it up there where there's bad lighting, mainly because the camera will focus better on it. You can see I can't even feel those bubbles anymore. A little teeny bit. You can't see them. And I'll know when I primer her up. Actually, I'll give her the silver paint treatment like I tend to do. You can see that right there. Alright. One other thing, since this is progressing along pretty well and pretty quickly, one other thing I wanted to do, yeah, that's gluing down really well and in place. They ain't gonna go anywhere. Talk about the guns. Here are the guns for the ship. There is incredibly little reference material about this ship. Unless you got the original CGI stills, you're probably not going to find anything at all about this model on the internet. Because there just isn't anything. Ah, that's going to be bad. Some of the super glue leaked out. Oh, I'm going to sand that pretty good, and I got to do that joint anyhow. There isn't anything that I can find on the internet about this. The ship appears very briefly in Babylon 5, mainly in the big battles where, you know, the non-aligned worlds are all show up in a massive fleet with white stars everywhere, Earth ships everywhere, Minbari ships everywhere. So this guy doesn't have very many appearances, so it's really hard to see him and find him anywhere in the show. The guns, I don't know if I want to do this or not. I have some brass rod, I have a brass rod and brass tube right here. The brass tube is the exact same diameter as the outer edge of the gun. This brass rod is about the same diameter as the inner tubing there. Been trying to think if I want to rebuild these out of brass rod or not. I got a few days before I need to figure that out. They go on the end of the wing right here, like this. My problem here is I don't like how this is going to glue up or fit. Whereas if I use brass tubing, I can drill in, stick it in, and glue it in really well. And this is a lot stronger than this is going to be, because this is metal. This is resin, and there's some tiny little bits of resin in there. So this worries me. Pinning this, I can't pin this. Not easily, simply because of the shape of it. It'll be a pain to pin, and this is going to require some good cleanup. Whereas this, no, not so much cleanup. Just cut it, glue it together, get some tape in there to align it properly. We're done. I have my main guns. So that's what I'm thinking about right now, making them out of brass. Only thing I'd have to do is the end of this, I have to cut a little circular end piece out of this and fit it through the brass tubing, but that my scratch building skills are up for that. Well, anyhow, I'm rambling, just talking about future parts on this thing. I got the B-wing on there. I'll be back in a little bit when I'm ready to glue this up. I'm gonna go eat some dinner first. Back in a bit.